Okay, hello, welcome.
Hi.
I'm now talking to Richard, I don't know how to pronounce your surname, Richard.
Hey, how?
Hayhow, as it is. Okay, lovely. I'm
Yes.
talking to Richard Hayhow today, and we just want to chat about, I think, the process that we've both found to work in our work. And so I'm just going to give a short visual description. We'll both just give a short visual description, and then we're just going to launch into a little chat, which we hope might be also interesting to other people. So
Yeah.
I'm Jo Willis. I'm the creative director and founder of an arts charity called Shallal. I have grey hair, blue glasses, a light blue headband, a pink scarf, a black top, sitting on a grey chair in front of cream canvas and wood slats. So,
Wow.
Richard,
That's a really good description.
keep trying.
Hi,
I'll get better at it.
I'm Richard Hayhow. And yeah, it's pronounced as it's spelled. Um, I'm the director of Open Theatre Company, which I have been for 35 years. So it's been quite a long haul in all sorts of lovely, pleasurable ways. I'm an older white man with whitish, balding hair, um, blue eyes, and I'm wearing I don't know, a jumper with which is sort of, I don't know, bluey green, creamy, checky sort of thing. And a blue shirt, and I'm in front of a bookcase, I think, with some books and files and stuff on it. There we go.
Thank you. You might want to tip your screen again, just so we sort of,
Okay.
it doesn't. Ah, that's it. So your
Is
head.
that better? Sorry.
That's all right.
I haven't
Um,
got a picture of me, so I can't see how I'm looking. Yeah.
oh,
Okay.
can't you? Okay. Well,
Well, I
that's
can if,
very
yeah, I
sensible.
just don't like looking at myself when I'm talking.
That's really sensible. I think, yes, that's very sensible. Okay, lovely. So we'd already started launching in because we were talking about Peter Slade, who'd written about drama with children, and I found Peter Slade's Natural Dance book when I was shadowing Wolfgang Stang in London, and it was one of the things I read, and it was about personal absorption and dream phases, which I found really useful, and how people emerge from sort of childhood into their congruent sort of movement. So Rich has been working for 35 years, and Shallal comes up to a 40th anniversary in a couple of years' time. So I've been working around the same time, which is
Mhm.
interesting. We've been in completely different parts of the world. So you're sort of Coventry, Birmingham, and I'm Cornwall, and
Yeah.
you're theatre and I'm dance, but dance theatre. So it was just really interesting. So I came across Richard because I had to write it down what it was, a British Empire Medal, and,
Oh, shut.
and also, but it was about non-verbal physical theatre. And I
Yes.
suddenly just really excited. So
Yeah.
non-verbal physical theatre, you found that approach, that way of working.
Yeah. It's when you say theatre, where I'm theatre, your dance, the kind of connections between the two are really strong, I think. And I think we have these artificial categories. So
Yeah.
you're either theatre or you're either dance. And when I used to work with the company of actors called the Shysters many years ago, the best quote we had was, "This is on the borderlines of theatre, dance, and mime." And it meant it was somewhere in the middle of all of that. It wasn't either one of those things
Yeah.
or any of those things on its own. So that discovery process of the non-verbal physical theatre came from working with the Shysters, who were a company of actors with learning disabilities. We collectively chose the name Shysters to be a little provocative. But I was also thinking, when I talk about where this came from, there are many sort of um, threads, I guess, that led me to this place. One of which was when I was between uh, leaving school and going to university. I had a 2 year sort of sabbatical enforced because I dropped out of university. And in that time, I went clubbing virtually every night. And I discovered the freedom of physical expression simply by being in, well, what we used to call discotheques those days, nightclubs, just dancing and exploring what my body can do in relation to music. And that sort of gave me that freedom of expression, but I didn't understand how it connected with theatre or the arts because I was trained as a maths and physics person. I've got maths and physics A level. And it was only when I got to university that I did drama as a third option by chance in the first year, and then began to discover, oh my God, this is what I want to do. There's something I found out about myself that I did not understand from doing maths and physics, basically. And that for me was a very simple philosophy, which is it changed my life. And there used to be the Smirnoff ads in those days, which they kind of say drinking Smirnoff changed my life. I say doing drama changed my life. But the very simple thing is that I thought if it can do that for me, it can do it for anyone. I'm not anyone different, unique, or whatever. That this is a universal thing that we can all do. So interestingly, one of the other key moments was going on a residency with Wolfgang Stanger in the late 80s, I think. I know we were there for like 3 days, I think. And Wolfgang's approach was one of those eye-opening moments where he would literally have his stack of CDs and he'd just blindly take one and put it in the CD player and go, right, we're going to work with this piece of music. I have no idea what it is, but we will work with this piece of music. And I clearly remember him asking me to do something with a particular piece of music. So I just got up and did it. So that freedom of expression that Wolfgang was so much into, at the time, you don't realize the importance of these things. But when you look back, you go, oh, that's why I do that.
Yeah, no, yeah, Wolfgang changed my life. I shadowed him and he was brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're happy for me to burble on, I can talk a little
Please.
bit
Yes,
more.
I want to carry on. Yeah.
Just
Just had to go Wolfgang, yeah, you know.
yeah, yeah. But that was the only. I mean, I read about what he did, and I think I went to see one of his shows in London. But apart from that, that was the only real contact I had. But there was a connection there, obviously. I'd already started working with adults with learning disabilities, and I was doing quite a lot of the sort of traditional text-based work that I thought theatre was. And kind of going, this doesn't quite feel right. There's something wrong here. I don't quite know what it is. So when I got, and I was dabbling in it. I wasn't doing it full time. It was like 2 hour sessions a week and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of thought, what I need to do is get in a room with some adults with learning disabilities and spend 3 days a week at least working with them, and then maybe we'll discover something. Which is how the Shysters came about. And luckily, I was working with the Belgrade Theatre in Coventry at the time, and the woman who I was liaising with there said, "Okay, I'll find you some money so you can do that," which was great. So I went in the room. I recruited these young people from special schools and from contacts I knew in Coventry, and we eventually had a group of 10 young adults with learning disabilities. And I get in the space and try all sorts of things. And I go and keep going, no, this ain't working, this ain't working. And eventually one day I thought I've got to stop them talking because everything they're doing is like really bad versions of EastEnders. And I just thought, I don't want to make theatre like that, please. But how do I stop them? So I brought in full masks, full white masks, and said, I'm not a mask worker. I've no idea what masks, well, since then I have. But at that stage, I had no idea what to do with the masks, except I knew if I put them on their faces, it would shut them up and they'd have to start expressing themselves through their bodies. So that was the first step on that road to going, let's relocate the way we create, not through our voices, but through our bodies. And it was a sort of instinctive response. So then we started work and we managed to create quite a lot of really lovely, interesting, sometimes comical, sometimes tragic scenes with masks and with them using their bodies. It took them 3 months to get used to it, going every day they come in, do we have to put those masks on? And I go, yes, yes, you do. But eventually they got to the point where they loved working with masks, because they could concentrate on their physicality. Um, and then I thought there's something else I need to add into this, and I realized it was music. So we started adding music into the scenes they were making, and then eventually started using music as the starting point for the process of creation rather than something you add in afterwards, like in a film sort of thing. So that's essentially the process that took me into non-verbal physical theatre with music, which is the lovely, eloquent way of describing what we do, and to create theatre on the borderlines of theatre, dance, and mime. So, yeah, and it wasn't a planned process. It was and something I also say is, so I was in this room. We stayed together for 14 years as a company. I'd go into the room, and with all due respect, and sorry for the language, but nobody gave a shit about what we were doing because it was working with people with learning disabilities. So it was somewhere over there. So that gave me enormous freedom, and the young people we were working with enormous freedom to just go, doesn't really matter what we're doing. Let's just do whatever we feel is good. So I worked intensively with the Shysters for 10 years, and those 10 years were absolutely formative for the way we work now.
And
So,
do you pass that on to other people? Because you have a large team now, don't you? How much do you
yes,
pass it on, or how much is that just your process and other people have their process of working?
that for me, that became a really interesting question. Is this, am I doing this because, I did 2 years of clubbing and therefore I'm the only person in the world who could do it? Or is this a practice that I can pass on and train other people in? And I got to the point of thinking, well, if I can't pass it on, then what's the point? I'm having a great time, but it's not, so what? Um, and that also happened at roughly the same time where we did a residency at the theatre in uh, theatre in the Round, the New Vic in Newcastle upon Lyme, not Newcastle on Tyne. And we did a residency up there, and at the end of that, the woman we were working with said, "You know what? The Shysters are great actors, but they're also great people." And I thought that's fascinating because I've always, in the way that that university drama changed me as a person, I thought, what's the connection between what we've been doing in terms of creating great creative work, but also it's enabled those young people to discover who they are and what they're capable of doing. And I thought, what would happen if I went into a special school and started working with 5-year-olds with this practice that I was now calling, well, I've got a practice. What would happen if I could impact young people at that age in terms of their discovery process of who they are and what they're capable of doing? And luckily, that was around the time of Creative Partnerships, which was the Arts Council program of work that was supporting artists to work in schools. And the woman who was running the Coventry version of that said to me, do you want to go and work in the school? And I said, yes, it's got to be a special school. I'm not going to do a project. I want to work in there for at least a year with the same young people to find out whether this practice works. Luckily, she said yes, because maybe I was quite persuasive. I worked in that school for 6 years with the same young people from 5 to 11, and then slowly expanded out to working with the entire school over that period of 6 years. Um, I'm saying this because this was also, in terms of passing on the practice, it was seeing what is the relevance, what is it, what's the point of it? So training other people in what we're doing, because I was inundated with schools then saying, can you come and do the work in our school? So the impetus to train other people became more about training them in how to apply the practice in schools. So we now have a team of 15 practitioners who work across 20 special schools all year round. So it's massive. We reach, it's really difficult to know the figures, but in the region of 3,000 young people every year,
Brilliant.
with the practice. So. But for me, that's the importance of the training other people is so it enables many more young people with learning disabilities to engage in what we're doing and help them discover who they are and what they're capable of doing. So yes, so that impulse to go, is this a practice? Is it just something I do when I go in a room and I can't stop myself doing, or is it something that is trainable in and has a validation above and beyond? Yeah, it's great because I can do it. So yes, it's evolved into a practice or a methodology or whatever you like to call it, and we now say it's a theatre making process and an educational pedagogy. So
Right.
and the two things are so intertwined, you can't really separate them out, but it is both. Yeah.
Yeah. And how long then, if when you're working with a young person who's going to go on and deliver these sessions, how long do they come and just sort of yeah, what do you do?
Are you,
I'm really curious. Yeah, so.
if we're talking about training a practitioner to work in the way we work, we say it takes 2 years.
Excellent. Okay.
2 years on the job training.
Yeah.
And you basically do a process of being a trainee for a while, then you become an assistant practitioner, and eventually you lead a practitioner, you
Yeah.
become a lead practitioner, and that process takes 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's partly because it's very easy to think that non-verbal work is about stopping talking,
Mm.
but it's far more than that. It's a completely different way of engaging in the world. And you have to rediscover that in yourself
Yes.
because as babies, we know how to do it.
Well, yeah.
And then we get taught not to do
Do
it.
it.
The process of discovering or rediscovering how to communicate non-verbally, how to engage in everything you do non-verbally is a long process that takes time to get comfortable and really rooted in
Yeah.
that so that non-verbal communication actually supersedes verbal
Mm.
communication
Mm.
in many ways. So that's one strand. And the other strand is that if you work in a special school, in special schools, you see that we've got this phrase learning disabilities, and it's so inadequate
Mm.
to describe the richness and range of young people you find in special schools.
Huge. Yeah.
So you can go into one special school and think, oh, I know how to do the practice. Then you go in another special school and go, oh my God,
No idea.
it's not working. So you have to adapt everything you do according to who's in the room with you. And that learning how to be adaptable and
Mm.
flexible is part of why it takes so long as well.
Yeah.
Because we don't have a set of rules that you follow. We don't have, these are the games and exercises that you do. Everything is open to interpretation according to who's in the room.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
yeah,
that's fascinating. That's really interesting. I was talking to a psychologist friend the other day, and I was saying, well, I don't prep my work anymore, hardly at all. I said I just go in and I sort of do it. It's a bit risky, and I just do it. And he said, oh well, we have a word for that. That's called the well. And you're
the
not
well.
the well. And he said, you're not. And I tried to look it up. I couldn't find enough about it. I need to ask him more about it. But he said it's not that you don't know anything. He said it's just that you've actually got that huge reservoir of experience,
Oh yeah,
that
yeah,
you've
yeah,
just got this huge well of experience. So if that doesn't work, you'll try that. And if that doesn't work,
yeah,
you'll try that. And I just say, I don't know that I'll be able to work with who walks in or comes into the room, but I will try. So that's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I have
yeah,
no idea. I don't claim that I can work with equity or accessibility, but I darn well want to. So I
yeah,
will
yeah,
try,
yeah, 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 yeah.
but I'm not, so I don't claim much with it. So that's very interesting because years back when we just became a charity, we talked about trying to get people an accreditation and really didn't have the structure or in a way the mass of people or the funding to do it. So
Yeah,
we've
yeah.
always sort of put that on hold, and people come through us in a sort of osmotic way, which is that usually they've been in the sessions themselves, then they might already have some background in the arts, then they might become, then so they spend quite a lot of time with us, then they might become an associate artist, and sometimes they become a lead facilitator, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they stay as an
Yeah,
associate artist, as someone who's really brilliant and interesting and enlivens the room and can work with lots of people, but we're not saying
yeah,
take the whole responsibility. Um,
yeah,
so
yeah. I
it's got
completely
a
understand that.
fluid
Yeah.
thing, but it's really fascinating to hear yours, because obviously working in schools, it's become more sort of formula, more of a form, not a formula, but it's got more structure to it than ours.
Maybe, although what I always say to practitioners is that if you can go in a room with no thought in your head about what you're going to do, work in the moment and lose yourself in the moment, and then at the end of 50 minutes or an hour go, what the bloody hell did I do? It was amazing what happened, but I've no idea why it happened or how it happened. I said that's a great place to be.
Mm,
To not go, and actually we did a training session the other day about going, how do we not control?
yes.
How do we make sure we're not trying to control what's going on in the room,
Yeah.
so that you're actually working in response and, in harmony, whatever the words are, with the people in the room with you.
Mm,
And if you have a plan, that plan is often going against what's happening in the room. So give up that notion that you need to be in control. I remember also I went into one school and they were talking about planning and what should all of this. And I said, well, we've developed this notion of backwards planning. So what we do is we go we go and run a session, and then at the end of it, we work out why we did what we did, and that's the plan.
Oh,
So,
lovely. See, I think I need all this sort of language, because I think I came in sort of really unconfident, and I'm trying to explain to people and then going, but I don't want to explain to people because it works. And if it works, it works. And we're just
yeah,
so back
yeah,
planning's great. Someone told me
yeah,
about reflective practice once, and that was what I was taught anyway, because Wolfgang just said, when you come out of a session, just think about what have you learned,
yeah,
and
yeah,
usually
yeah.
it's like, I haven't reached that person. How can I try and reach them next time? What could I have done better than,
Yeah,
yeah, what
that,
did
and
work?
that's yeah. The woman called Jo Willis who set me up in schools. We then went on and wrote a few articles together
What did you?
about the practice. And we talked about that kind of reflection, but we also talked about reflection in action, which means
Yes.
in every single moment you're engaging, you are reflecting as well on what you're doing in response to what's happening. So you can't plan that, and also you can't verbalize it.
And you can't almost sometimes teach it. You can give people
No.
confidence. I think you can give people confidence it works, can't you? That they've
Yeah, yeah,
seen
yeah,
stuff
yeah,
and they've been in it and they've done it. And it's like,
yeah,
I was in enough of Wolfgang's sessions that I know that his approach, I'd seen him do it in lots of different situations. So I knew you could adapt it and it could work. And it
yeah,
was more about, for me at that time, and I think it probably still is, it was more about me being in the right place to be able to go
yeah,
into the session. And if I'm
yeah,
sort of
yeah,
in the right place, then something will probably sort of happen.
yeah. But I think the other thing for me, which I kind of want to really emphasize, is that the practice that we've developed, or I developed and
Hmm.
then passed on, is absolutely, and to use a popular word these days, it's been co-created with people with learning
Oh,
disabilities.
yeah.
So all of this we're talking about, my understanding of it has come from working with people with learning disabilities and the way they've engaged. So one of the other things that happened with the Shysters was I realized I was trying to structure everything,
Hmm.
and they couldn't grab hold of that structure. They wanted to do things in their own way. And you go, why am I pushing this structure? Who's that for? Is it me? Yeah. So let's go down that road of not having the structure, because then we might create something far more interesting.
Yes, and I, I
Um,
I looked around years ago, and I jumped up. I was jumping up, talking to the people I was working with when we first were working, and I don't know if I did it in the moment or a bit later, and I like, why do I enjoy this so much? And
yeah,
and what I got from that moment was, I love gestural humor. We all
yeah,
have gestural humor, and you can stand up with people, and people with a learning disability, or however, whatever label, because sometimes, you know, the conversation might be up here and you're not always getting it. I always go like, if I was in a room with people who are all at PhD level or in a slightly different language, I'd get lost. I wouldn't get it all.
Yeah,
But we all grow up reading the body.
yeah,
So we
yes,
all know, even if it's unconsciously, and people who are watching as well read the body, which is why they like
yeah,
watching it. So we all can read the body. So if you get up and you just go,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
oh, da, 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 just have a great laugh.
yeah,
And sort of
yeah,
that
and
gestural communication, which is tricky, isn't it?
absolutely,
And if you
yeah,
practice that, it's
yeah.
universal, really.
And it's beyond body language for me. It's about
Yeah.
a far more in-depth, rich experience of communication through your body. And, you know, there's scientific research that says 10-15% of communication is verbal
Yeah.
and the rest is non-verbal.
Yeah.
And you kind of go, okay, our entire education system is predicated on learning through words, and we do not educate ourselves in how to learn through our bodies.
And I sort of, yes, I go like that. For my mind, there's like that. It's almost like two rungs of a ladder. You've got, oh, I'm going to lose it now. But, you know, structure and sort of learning consciously, and then you've got just learning unconsciously and impulsively, and so you've got
Yeah,
technique and spontaneity. That's the ones.
yeah,
And really, you have to go a little bit between the two. I think too much
yeah,
spontaneity gets a bit fluffy,
yeah,
lose it.
yeah,
Too much
yeah.
structure, too rigid, it's brittle.
Mm.
You know, you need a bit of both. Those,
Yeah, and that also for me became my realization. What my was to release that spontaneity and creativity and allow people to do things in their own way, and then look at, well, how does this become communication to other people
yes,
in terms of a piece of theatre? How do I make sure that what is true and authentic and absolutely coming from them as creators, but how does that translate to an audience?
yeah,
How my role is to make sure that an audience would read it well, sort of
yes.
thing. So adjusting things to do that, and maybe getting into that area of a bit of technique. So if you do it this way, it's far better than if you do it that way. That sort of thing. Yeah.
Yes, I always say to people, I used to get, you have to build up a lot of trust because I go like, could you try
So,
coming in now? Oh no, do you mind if you go out and someone else tries? And sort of people would have to
yeah, yeah,
feel comfortable enough that I wasn't criticizing them. We would,
yeah,
and I used to say like, if somebody doesn't like the show, they need to come and criticize me, not the people who've done it, because I'm the one who said it's okay for you to get up there and do it, love. You know,
yeah, yeah.
not
But
their
that's
fault.
also an interesting question about creativity, because from my perspective, creativity is something that we share in a room together and nobody owns it.
Yeah,
So it's not, oh, I've done this amazing thing. Actually, the room has enabled you to do that thing. And actually, you can share that with someone else and they could do it as well. And actually, they might do it better than you or whatever. But let's share the whole thing.
yeah,
That's really important. But the other really interesting thing when I was working with the shysters, um, we do some work, non-verbal physical work, and then I try and talk to them about what they've done. And I thought, I this isn't I can't do this. So then, and you know, this is the traditional director role. You sit in the chair, watch what's going on, and then you say, oh, could you do it this way? Could you say that bit a bit louder or whatever? You sit in your chair and do that. What I realized was I had to get up and engage with the actors, the performers, in their process of creating physically and non-verbally in order to do that shaping. I
yeah,
couldn't go sit and talk to them. I had to get up and work with them. And so what's interesting now when we do the work is we talk about, and this is another thing practitioners have to learn, that yes, the work is non-verbal, physical, um, but you also have to facilitate non-verbally and physically.
mm,
You can't go into a room and say, right, I want you to do this, this, and this, or could you stand over there? You have to find a way of doing that non-verbally and physically. And that's a deep, deep challenge for a
yeah.
lot of people.
That's fascinating. Yes, because I started. So I did. Mine is it's similar but different in that because I was getting everyone to do improv, and I didn't want anyone to dance or move like me. I'm not that great a dancer anyway, so didn't tear that
Yeah.
one. Um, And so I was working in a centre, so I worked in adult training centres, not schools.
Yes.
And I was getting people to sort of, stand on chairs, stand on tables, go underneath tables because you always got the dining room or the hall to
Yeah.
work in. And it was slightly dangerous. And I was tired. So I started just sitting out and watching for sort of safety's sake. So
Yeah.
I would watch and put on music and make minimal suggestions. And it's sort of like, I have to, although I'm talking a lot to myself in my head, or I'm watching things and I'm thinking what to do next, I say very little. Because as soon as you switch into the head, you
Yeah.
lose people. Because
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
I might articulate my what I'm thinking and go like, oh, do you know, it's really great, but if we do this and if we do that, and then I'm going like, I've just lost them all. I just shut up, just turn on the music and say, go that way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like just,
Yeah. Yeah.
the less
Yeah.
you say, the better it is. And
Yeah.
so what we've done, because I'm not an experienced theatre maker or performer, I came into it more through a sort of volunteer way and liking working with people. And then I'd done yoga and I liked dance a bit, and so I'd gone into it that way. We've found a way of performing now which is totally spontaneous. So
Right.
we've taken the whole trusting your gesture, really trusting the working of the group.
Yeah.
And we have like 3 or 4 very simple things which everyone can grab hold of, and sometimes we work with music we've never heard before. So
Yeah.
you can do your own thing if you feel really inspired, because sometimes people are very inspired. You can work with others, you can be still, and you can get off the stage.
Yeah. All of that.
That's the tricky one. And then when they really are performing well, I go like, now you have to make it look good, because you
Yes.
feel like you don't want to go on the stage, but your friend might have been on there for a minute looking good. Now it's got a bit boring, so you need to make, as part of it, you need to make something else happen. You need to bring something else in. So we've just pushed our performance as far as it really probably as far as it can go on improv, really.
Yeah. Okay. Another thing I was just thinking about then was that in that process with the shysters, I would be watching them thinking, what on earth are you experiencing?
Yeah.
And they could not articulate what they're experiencing. So I thought, I've got to get up and be with them and do what they're doing in order to discover or find a better sense of what it is that they were experiencing, because they would never be able to explain it in words. And for me, this is where words, we consider words to be the pinnacle of our achievement, and that everything that happens in life we can put into words if only we had the right words, sort of thing. And what I've learned is that is fundamentally wrong. There are things that we can do that are beyond words that will never be put into words in 100,000 years, but they are equally as valuable. So in the work we do in schools now, we talk a lot about mirroring, which is reflecting back to a child what they're doing physically. You build connection through that, but you also create a bond and create an understanding between you because you are physically doing the same things. So the process of mirroring, which was, a little trick from drama days of doing a mirror exercise, you kind of go, no, this is fundamental to discovering who a person is and what they're capable of doing as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, when you were talking at the very beginning, talking about the body and everything and the movement, I was thinking the other thing I love, so we've gone into the visual arts as well, because Cornwall's a very visual arts culture, is I love the body in the landscape. So there's that just thing of the figure that you can read the figure in the landscape. And I think Barbara Hepworth or someone talked about the figure in the landscape. So that's a big thing for me as well. It's just the way somebody holds their shoulders says so much, isn't it? All you have to do is just change a little bit, and the whole how you read it is completely different. So all that, I love all that.
Yeah. Great. So
so when you talked about, so the other thing was that, so nonverbal physical theatre, but you're also talking about the development of the person, aren't you? And I think it's really interesting. So lots of the people in Shallal can very easily articulate better sometimes than I can what it means to them and what they like about it and why it works. And so obviously with people who have more limited speech, that's not so clear, but it can still be there. But what's the educational side of that? How did you develop that as well? Or how do you also manage to sort of explain it? I love your sort of backward learning. That's just brilliant. You have to put it in a way that people will accept it, you know. Backwards back, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, the best way that in school settings that people understand what you're doing is by us going in and doing it, and the teacher being part of it and going so many times, just going, "Wow, I didn't think that child could do that."
Yeah.
And then you start, because you cannot go in and to a school cold and go, look, we do this non-verbal physical theatre, it's amazing. And they go, really? So the work the work in schools has built up over 20 years from that one school to these 20 schools, and we work with far more than that over the years. It's all been done by word of mouth or by us just going into the school and saying, look, we'll do a workshop, see if you like it, and then wanting us back. And we've never had to advertise for the school work ever, because we do it by proving it first. So I've forgotten what your question was.
Yes, it was sort of that. It was sort of, well, it was the lady who saw you at the Young Vic saying about how it affect people as well. So I see that as well. So for me, it's like improvisation is huge life skills. You know, you get confidence with gesture, you get confidence to dare to say something, to be able to be there, to make choices. You know, for us in improvisation, we're constantly making choices. So you get the confidence to make choices.
And it's about being able to discover what your body is about and what it can do. And being embodied is really important. And we live in a world where we become disembodied in all sorts of ways, and that's because of the prevalence of words which are not embodied. So enabling a child to discover who they are and what they're capable of doing is a physical act. It's not a mental act. And that's the strength of what we do and how we achieve what we do achieve, I think. And so many times, you could go into 100 times where you can just see the teacher not understanding how to communicate, how to connect. And you go, that's the problem. It's not the child who's got the problem. It's you who doesn't know how to connect. And I'm not blaming teachers because they're educated to be like that. That's a fundamental flaw. I'm just aware of time.
You need to go in a minute. So do you see teachers change? I mean, it's sort of probably
yes,
but you see them change their practice, change the way
and
they communicate with the children.
Yeah, we're just doing this huge program, 3-year program work funded by Paul Hamlin that is called Teaching Differently. How do we train teachers to do the work we do? And their journey through that process, you know, the things they're saying now compared to what they said, it's just wonderful, amazing.
You just have to send me some of your articles so I can read
okay.
about it.
yeah, will do. Okay.
Right. Oh, thank you, Richard. I don't want to. That's really great. I think that was a good one. It was nice to hear it all. And
great.
Learn
Thank you.
And one day we'll get to see each other's work or something.
Yeah, that would be great.
And you've got some on YouTube, I saw, so I think I can go down and
and we're just redeveloping our performance work as well because the school's work took over basically. But we're now coming back and creating work like the Shysters used to create, and we're on tour next May with a piece of theatre. So maybe you could come. It's in the Midlands though, but not. Not down in Cornwall.
I know. I was joking with a friend just now, going, "It's over the Tamar, mate. It's over the Tamar."
Yeah.
You don't get out that often, but you never know.
Yeah.
I would love to.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thank
Brilliant.
You so much, Thank you.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.